Welcome to this explainer. For decades, the world has been asking questions about Gaza and the pursuit of peace in the Middle East. But what if we've been asking the entirely wrong questions? When we turn on the news or scroll through social media, we are just bombarded with this constant stream of political statements and devastating imagery. But if you look past those daily headlines, a very different story emerges. Today, we're going to dig into the underlying strategies and the hidden economic factors that are actually driving this conflict. We're going to explore the deep-rooted geopolitical interests and some pretty surprising economic incentives that consistently sabotage peace efforts right when they seem most possible. Okay, let's dive right in.
Look, we constantly see questions like, when will the ceasefire happen? Or how will a two-state solution be reached? Literally plastered across our news networks 24/7. But analysts point out that focusing solely on these immediate surface-level issues completely misses the root of the problem. It kind of assumes that the conflict is just this sequence of battles that needs a quick pause, rather than a deeply entrenched system.
To really understand what's going on here, we need to think of it like a giant iceberg. We have to contrast these surface-level illusions, the daily headlines about pauses and fighting, with the hidden economic reality beneath the water. The actual question we need to be asking is, who profits from this conflict? And who deliberately creates obstacles when a genuine chance for peace emerges? So let's peel back the layers of this iceberg.
First up, Layer 1, the political illusion and the failure of Oslo. To understand this failure, let's just look chronologically at why the initial global hope for an independent Palestinian state ultimately collapsed. Back in 1993, the whole world watched a historic handshake on the White House lawn between PLO chairman Yasser Arafat and Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. The Oslo Accords were signed, and for the very first time, both sides recognized each other's existence. The core goal? To establish an independent Palestinian state within 5 years, by 1998. But that initial hope stalled out pretty quickly. Critics highlight a major flaw here: the most critical and sensitive issues, things like the return of Palestinian refugees, the future of Jerusalem, and independent borders, were simply postponed. Pushing these massive issues down the road basically created a dangerous vacuum on the ground, and that ultimately empowered hardline extremists on both sides, who heavily opposed the peace process.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how profound the structural flaw of that agreement was. Under Oslo, the land was divided up. Areas A and B, where the majority of Palestinians lived, were given limited civilian authority. But then there's Area C. This represents over 60% of the West Bank, and it contains the vast majority of the region's natural resources and its most fertile land. Yet, it remained entirely under Israeli control. Analysts neutrally observe that keeping the economic backbone of the territory out of Palestinian hands fatally compromised the foundation of peace before the journey even really got started.
Moving deeper, we reach Layer 2, the economic engine and the war economy.
So, as we go deeper into the iceberg, we really have to ask, who is financially benefiting from the failure of peace and the ongoing blockade? Analysts argue that this conflict actually operates as a highly lucrative war economy. Where there's demand, there's supply, right? And the profiteers are surprisingly diverse. You have international contractors and corporations benefiting massively from arms sales and military contracts. The region essentially serves as a testing ground for high-tech security technologies. Even in the aftermath of destruction, those multi-million-dollar reconstruction contracts present massive financial windfalls. Plus, just off the coast of Gaza, there are significant offshore natural gas reserves. As long as the current control remains, access to these incredibly valuable resources stays in the hands of powerful entities rather than the Palestinians. This is a reality closely watched by financial markets, but honestly, it's rarely highlighted in your evening news broadcasts.
Now contrast those lucrative corporate profits with this stark figure: 80%. While a war economy thrives behind the scenes, United Nations reports indicate that roughly 80% of Gaza's population is left entirely reliant on international aid, literally just to survive. They are suffering through historic levels of poverty and unemployment.
Which brings us to the reality of the blockade that's been imposed since 2007. Human rights organizations and UN officials frequently refer to Gaza as an open-air prison. Now, Israel maintains that the blockade is strictly a necessary security measure, but critics argue it has systematically dismantled the local economy. Because of this, reports indicate these restrictions haven't just caused poverty, they've actually birthed exploitative black markets and smuggling operations. The prices for basic necessities just absolutely skyrocket in these conditions, allowing corrupt actors on both sides to exploit the desperation of the general public.
That takes us to Layer 3, the global chessboard and shadow players.
See, this isn't just a conflict between two local parties. It's a massive global chessboard where external powers manipulate the situation for their own strategic advantages. Geopolitically, the United States has historically played a central role here. While publicly advocating for peace, the U.S. provides billions in unconditional military and financial aid, which critics argue consistently tips the balance of power. Even recent U.S. initiatives, like that maritime aid pier, faced harsh criticism and ultimately failed to meaningfully stop the humanitarian crisis or the military actions. On the flip side, we have various Arab states. Through normalization deals like the Abraham Accords, critics suggest these nations have prioritized lucrative economic and strategic ties with Israel. This effectively bypasses the core issues of the Palestinian occupation and leaves many Palestinians feeling completely abandoned for the sake of regional geoeconomics.
Because of all these external pressures, the source material notes a really troubling pattern. Internationally proposed peace plans or ceasefire deals are often structurally biased right from the start. They frequently demand immediate, near-impossible conditions from the Palestinian side, while completely ignoring the ongoing expansion of illegal settlements and the actual root issue of the occupation itself.
And at the very bottom of the iceberg, we find the core, the real human cost.
To ground all of this high-level political and economic data in reality, we have to look at the over 2 million human beings trapped in this system. Sources outline a very mechanical, devastating cycle at the ground level. Step 1, bombardment turns cities into rubble and destroys civilian infrastructure, pushing the economy back by decades. Step 2, when the bombing finally pauses and the world promises to rebuild, the strict blockade prevents the entry of essential materials, things like cement and iron, which leads to Step 3, meaningful reconstruction becomes literally impossible for decades. Because of this endless loop, reports document how hospital systems completely collapse, clean water and electricity vanish, and child malnutrition reaches terrifying levels, where kids are actively dying of preventable diseases.
So what happens when the outside world actually tries to break this cycle? Well, we see a stark contrast between global humanitarian aid promises and the harsh reality on the water. When international activists have attempted to deliver aid directly via the sea, like with the Freedom Flotilla, their ships have been violently intercepted in international waters. Critics frequently refer to these actions as maritime piracy. They cite it as absolute proof that the blockade is not merely about border security, but about the deliberate isolation and collective punishment of an entire population.
An entire generation is growing up having only seen war, deprivation, and the funerals of their loved ones. As human rights advocates emphasize, these are not just statistics in some government report. They represent the severe, stolen dreams of real human beings, mothers losing children under the rubble, and youth holding college degrees facing a completely collapsed economy. It is the ultimate human cost of this geopolitical chess game.
Which brings us to redefining a path forward.
Having seen the entire iceberg now, from the failed political treaties and the incredibly lucrative war economy to the shadow players and the devastating human cost, we have to fundamentally redefine what a path forward even looks like. So the crucial point is this. We must stop confusing the illusion with the cure. A temporary ceasefire, merely silencing the guns for a moment, is an illusion. It's literally putting a bandage on a deep wound without treating the underlying infection. True peace, according to the source material, requires addressing the root disease. It means achieving actual justice, permanently ending the occupation, and ensuring that the people of Gaza have complete human rights, economic freedom, and total authority over their own land and resources.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply important question to consider today. If the current state of conflict is so incredibly profitable and strategically useful for the corporations, politicians, and global powers we've discussed, will the world's powerful ever actually allow real peace to happen? Think about the hidden interests we've uncovered in this explainer. If you found this breakdown valuable, please share this explainer with others so we can move beyond the surface-level headlines and start asking the questions that really matter. Thank you so much for joining us, and keep questioning the narrative.